Today is Tuesday, February the 12th, 2013. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mulligan.
He's Matt Irvin. And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 190. Yeah.
Hey, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about our book giveaways real quick.
We are giving away right now, this minute, we're giving away a copy of Pop Goes to Church. We have selected our winner from entries all around the world, and the winner of Pop Goes to Church is Chris Sumter, longtime listener, our official Mongolian missionary.
So I just got to say on this, there was not one entry from Seth Cotton.
Really?
Seth Cotton did not?
Whoa,
Did not
he's the
enter.
guy that usually hammers us, man.
Did he already
win
win this? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think he won this the last time.
Listen, what we'll do with that book, because of the cost of shipping and things of that nature, if Chris would rather us send that to him in Kindle.
May still be in the States.
Okay.
He was in. It depends on what state he's in.
All right.
We'll get that.
All right. Well, just let us know, Chris. We'll accommodate you either way.
Yeah, we will take care of you, the listener. All right. Now, today we have a special guest, Steve Corbett, on with us, and we're giving away a copy of the book When Helping Hurts. And whoever wins this book, you will have the choice of the physical version, which you can see we have, or the Kindle version. Totally up to you. I think Tony's giving too much power to the people, but a great, great book, and we're going to be giving that away on the show next week.
And choose the Kindle version so I can have that physical copy.
Dictators like you are always afraid of giving power to the people.
Yes.
All righty. Listen, we do want to welcome in studio today Matt Irvin. Matt is youth pastor over at Alive Wesleyan Church, and I know that you're a fan of the book that we're going to discuss today with our guest, which does lead me to introducing our guest today. Our guest is Steve Corbett. He's an assistant professor of community development at Covenant College and serves as community development specialist for the Chalmers Center. Previously, Mr. Corbett served as director of field operations and training for the Chalmers Center. Prior to coming to Covenant College, Steve worked for Food for the Hungry International as the regional director for Central and South America for 2 years. Before assuming these responsibilities, he served as the director of staff training for 9 years. In this capacity, he participated in the orientation and training of 1,500 staff working in 25 countries. Mr. Corbett has a BA from Covenant College and a M.Ed in adult education from the University of Georgia. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
All right. So we all are fans at a distance, love this book. It's a great resource for the church. So why don't we just start by talking about the evolution of this book? I mean, how did it come to be? Why did you and Brian feel the need to write this book?
Yeah, it's actually an incredibly pragmatic background to this. I was working at Chalmers Center, which basically is about kind of training the church in kind of economic development strategies that work both here in the U.S. and then different strategies for the majority world. And as part of that, we were doing some distance courses and realized we need to step back before we get into implementation of strategies and start background of just some theological background of why should we even care about this, and then some practical principles of, what is good development. And so I designed and was doing a 4-week distance course kind of on, foundations and principles of Christian community development or holistic ministry or transformational development, whatever term you want to use. And boy, it just kind of hit a button. We had a lot of people wanting to take the course to the point that I couldn't meet the demand.
Okay.
And so Brian kind of said, hey, let's write a book, and that'll get it out there and people get the message without having to go through this distance course. So there was a real pragmatic reason. It was just basically because of pent-up demand.
Sure.
So, Steve, what are some of the classic mistakes you see evangelicals making when reaching out to those in poverty, and how can that actually end up harming the ones we're trying to help?
Probably there's two that I think are the biggest. One, we focus so much on poverty as poverty of condition. I don't have a good house, I don't have clean water, I don't have a good enough job, I have a dangerous neighborhood, all those kinds of things. And those are real things, and that is a core issue of what poverty is. But we forget two other aspects of poverty, and they've been labeled, one thing's been labeled the poverty of being, kind of how we see ourselves. Bryant Myers calls it the marred identity of the poor. And with that, it's just either the world has told me, society has told me, people around me have told me I'm not capable, I'm not good enough of fixing my own life and take care of my own problems. Now, we, as Christians, we understand at one level that's really deeply true. We need the Lord to really have well-being in our lives. But it really leaves us, if we focus so much on just the poverty of stuff and condition, the solution is, gee, I have and you don't have, and so I'm going to come bring it. Wow. And in doing that, that really can deepen a person's sense of, yep, here's another example where somebody had to come fix my problems because I can't feed my children, I can't take care of my family, I can't as a leader of my community help my community experience well-being. So it's really the narrowness of how we've looked at poverty. Yeah. And a compassion, we're, as believers, we're so compassionate, we're driven to do something, but with this false definition, or this too narrow a definition is really the way to look at it. I think we end up deepening people's poverty of being as we're alleviating their poverty of condition, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, one of the things I love about this book, and I wish I'd gotten my hands on it sooner, is the theological framework you place everything in. And you started with this grid of creation, fall, and redemption. You referenced that earlier. How does this grid of creation, fall, and redemption impact the practical outlet of development or of helping without hurting?
Sure. I mean, I think what it does and what it did for me when I first learned this framework back in the late 70s and early 80s and saw it applied in the world of Christian community development, it just helps you understand the fullness of what Christ's redemption is. Yeah. He created, well, there's a couple of really cool things, but one is that, he created, everything he created was good and had good intentions. And when sin, we are rebelling against him, broke a relationship with him, it really fundamentally affected these other relationships. We were to be stewards of creation, which meant both the tending and caring, but also the creating bounty. The Garden of Eden was perfect, but wasn't complete. It was full of possibilities, and part of what we were supposed to do as his vice regents is steward that for his glory and make things real that were possible. And we're supposed to live in right relationship with others, right? The Philippians 2, consider one another's interests more important than your own, as well as this understanding self. That's one thing I like about the Westminster Confession of Faith. The first question of the Catechism, what's the chief end of man? To glorify God and enjoy him forever. Right. What rich purpose and understanding and self-identity is there? And God intended all that, and the fall broke all that. And Christ's redemption is to bring healing and wholeness and reconciliation, redemption to all of those relationships. So as we look in 1 Corinthians, when we talk about this, we've been given this ministry of reconciliation. That is incredibly broad and incredibly deep. And so what really determines how you carry that is your context. So if I'm a pastor in a poor neighborhood in rural Mozambique, how my church goes about and ministers and what it means to be a good neighbor there may mean some things like helping with agricultural training, maybe mean doing savings group in the church as a means to help economically as well as do discipleship and evangelism. If I'm a pastor in Beverly Hills, I've got broken people. Yeah. They don't need food lines. They don't need savings groups. They sure need to learn where real beauty is and where real value is. So the thing I think is so powerful, not only does it give us this incredible breadth of understanding of Christ's work, it also gives us this equality. We're all called to the same ministry. And it's just our context that helps drive how it can look different in practice.
Yeah. One of the things I think is so helpful about the theological grid that you and Brian lay down in this book is that it goes to, number one, what the fall did. You have these wonderful structures within creation, and yet the fall now has damaged these structures that, they can be bent the wrong way. But then in that, redemption, this is the hopeful message here, that part of what the Church of Jesus Christ is called to do is to rebuild these structures. And I think that you guys bring this so central within the book to really bring this theological base. I also want to take a moment here to just, I was so thrilled to see a book that you guys referenced, The Rise of Christianity by Rodney Starks. And I just want to read a quote that you guys have in the book from The Rise of Christianity. Christianity revitalized life in Greco-Roman cities by providing new norms and new kinds of social relationships, able to cope with many urgent urban problems. To cities filled with the homeless and impoverished, Christianity offered charity as well as hope. To cities filled with newcomers and strangers, Christianity offered an immediate oasis for attachments. To cities filled with orphans and widows, Christianity provided a new and expanded sense of family. To cities torn by violence and ethnic strife, Christianity offered a new basis for social solidarity. And to cities faced with epidemics, fires, and earthquakes, Christianity offered effective nursing services. We just last week we referenced this book on our show in the chat room. We were talking about sometimes we fall into this notion that things are worse now than they've ever been. And so Matthew T.G. here, our producer.
Not this again.
well, Matthew challenged it, and what I said is, listen, go read Rodney Stark's book. I mean, we act like abortion, that we've never faced that issue before, but they faced it. They faced infanticide, the sickness within the cities, and the redeeming aspects of the gospel that spoke to the social conditions of the day. And I think that, I want you to weigh in here, but I think Rodney Starks is a sociologist, but he is getting to the core of some of the things you guys are addressing from a theological point of view.
Yeah, I say amen to this whole issue of the world's going to hell in a handbasket. It's getting faster and faster. That's not my eschatology here.
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things here. Yeah, what's beautiful about that passage, it just goes, why aren't we doing that today? Why aren't we known as this church today? We've been there before. One of the things I get, actually, tired is the wrong word, but people look back to our book like, wow, this is amazing and new. And I'm like, this is like the most old message in the world.
Very good.
New here. You look into the history of the church. My wife and I are doing a lot of reading about the monastics and how they reached out and didn't hide from society, actually serve society deeply, but live deeply before the presence of the Lord. This is just part of who we are as God's people. I think one thing, and we talked a little bit earlier before the show started, this sometimes the issue of not just the role of the church in society, but the role of we as Christians and other institutions in society, like the state. The state has a valid role in society to play. And if Christians were doing all of their job perfectly, that wouldn't mean the state wouldn't need to exist. It still needs to exist. And it can help bring social good. And I think we can't be afraid of that and involved in that. I'm not some wild liberal Marxist here saying all this at all. But I just think we sometimes make these artificial divisions and we lose the power of our impact in multiple levels of society.
This might be a good, in the pre-show we talked a little bit about the Great Reversal. This is another thing I like about your book. Maybe just take a second to talk about, for those that aren't even familiar with the term, what was the Great Reversal and its impact that you discuss in the book?
Yeah, well, it was this whole kind of move to pietism that came in the late 1800s and moved into this century where we really just defined Christianity as primarily a religion of self with God in our inner life primarily. And of course, that's all true and powerful. But we reacted against some things we were seeing in kind of the liberal movement towards the gospel in society. And rather than combat that and say, no, we're supposed to be active in this, we really withdrew from that.
Yeah.
And we became in this situation where we so limited what the gospel was that somebody had to fill a gap. And we really retreated as the church. What's so amazing, guys, is you just look at the 1700s and 1800s and the church and society, all the things that the Wesleyan, the Methodists were doing in England, and all this good stuff that was doing against slavery, and all the incredible activity of the church.
Right.
How we went from that to retreating so quickly is always, I get the thinking that was happening, but it's always sad to me that we lost that heritage so fast.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Steve, real quick, we've got a ton of questions in the chat room that I want to ask you, and some of them are worded kind of weird, so I'm going to do my best. One of the questions was, how would you say that compartmentalizing restorative work plays into this idea of helping hurting? And the idea behind that was volunteerism versus a lifestyle.
Okay, I'm not sure I get the question. So
I'm not sure I get it either.
I do, if they're getting at this, okay, this idea of volunteerism, well, that's a little piece of my life.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go do
Yes.
this. Okay, I did it's Thanksgiving. I did the turkey thing with the homeless.
Yeah.
Good, check. Now let me get back to my normative life. versus this lifestyle of constantly looking of how am I serving others? How am I dying to self? How am I doing it in the public sphere, the private sphere, in my neighborhood and beyond? If that's what they're getting at, I totally get what they're getting. We don't want to just make this one little check. That's part of the problem with the short-term missions movement.
Yeah.
It's become this huge check-off. I went on this, I did this, I've done my thing, on I go. And that is just an incredibly shallow way to look at what we're supposed to be in society.
Well, you actually just answered another question from the chat room, so that was good. And then the other one I do want to ask you was, how does this book and how do you view how to help people move out of generational poverty?
That's incredibly deep and difficult, right? My daughter actually is working for an organization, so I won't give the name because I'll get accused of picking favorites, but she's working here in Chattanooga. She graduated from Covenant College, where I teach, and she's working with homeless women and their kids. And, I'm just, because of that, I mean, I've been homeless myself, but it wasn't generational. It was temporary. It was it's a lot of my own doing, but learning to see people who've been in generations of trauma and in generations of crisis, man, it wires you differently, really differently, so that you just don't process information the same. And what looks like an obvious good choice to somebody like me, who's got stability, can see long-term things, it just isn't as logical. So people are living logical lives from their perspective, but they can be self-destructive. So generational poverty, more than any other place, takes us being incredibly patient, incredibly long-term in our commitments. And we talk about the carnational ministry approach. That's where it's needed more than ever. And we just can't give up on people, and we can't expect them to make good decisions quickly, and we can't start labeling them as not caring, not good parents, lazy, blah, 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 whatever it might be, because they struggle to overcome deep wiring and embedding from their past.
Yeah, Steve, I think for our listeners, this is where I would encourage them to get the book, because you kind of track a story of a woman, a single mom who's it seems trapped in, a ghetto area, and you kind of talk through the evolution of how she got out of that, and I think it's informative. Also, too, I love the question out of the chat room, because I remember one time I was trying to explain to someone, I've been to Chicago quite a bit, and there's some pretty poverty-stricken places within inner Chicago, and I was explaining this, and someone looked at me, and this is someone, upper middle class America, raised that way, and said, well, why don't they just move out? As if the answer is simple, that just get out of there. And your response to that question is simply to say that it's a very, very complicated network of things. It's not any one specific thing. Right,
absolutely. And Amar'e Sen won the Nobel Prize in the last decade for writing a book called Development is Freedom. And that's the whole idea of we have freedom of choice. And for you and I, the four of us, we have so much freedom of choice.
Right.
And we just don't appreciate what it's like when you don't have it, and you don't have good models for it. And some just realities, you just can't pick up and leave. Just think, because I bring my education, I bring my social networks. If I don't find a job somewhere, I can call 10 people, and I'll probably get a reference in that city that I've never been in. Somebody knows somebody. And one of the, we talk a lot about social capital, especially in the U.S. It's a big issue. That people's social capital is so narrow. They just don't have those networks that can provide opportunities for them, which again goes back to, that's one of our biggest roles, is bringing our networks with us when we interact with people and opening up. If I can help get my son a job by calling a few friends, why can't I help somebody else get a job by getting to know them and being willing to make that call for them? Or call the mayor and say, hey, mayor, do you realize something you might want to pay attention to? Or the local banker, all these guys that are in our churches, by the way. We are a powerful, powerful group of people. And just think about, how do I use that power just to allow the people who don't have access to that, access to that.
So good,
A really practical example of our community is we have a local university, a Wesleyan university, in our neighborhood, and they have a system where a pastor's kid or a missionary's kid gets a certain amount of tuition assistance. And the question arose out of nowhere because we have a relationship with the pastor's daughter from another country. What do we do for them? If they want to attend this university, they don't have the same paperwork, they don't have the same opportunities for tuition assistance, and yet this is their one opportunity at a university education. How do we help them?
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things you talk about in the book is different kinds of paternalism and the need for the church to avoid this, especially when we're working in other countries. Take some time and kind of talk about that and flesh that out.
Sure. So the classic definition of paternalism is doing things for people they can do for themselves and providing things for people they can provide for themselves. So that's kind of labor paternalism. Now, this is me coming up and showing in your village and helping build a school building while you all hang around or don't hang around, but I just got to zip in, build it, and walk away. Or giving you stuff that if there's ways you could have gotten that, there's access to that. It may have been a longer, harder pathway, but you could have got there. So that's been kind of the traditional version of paternalism. And I just want to go back way in the very first question, Heath, I think you asked about some classic mistakes. And this really connects. We so often, because we focus on poverty of condition, and we say, I've heard this so many times, oh, they have nothing. They have nothing. What a lie. They do have things, and I won't get into the details of, in collectivist societies, your financial institutions your financial structures are not in institutions like banks and credit unions. They're in your people networks. And so when I've got something and my cousin needs something, you got it.
Yeah.
When I need something, my cousin gets it back. There's reciprocity in that that's very, very powerful. We just don't see it. From the outside, you can't take a picture of it because they're so embedded in social relationships. So anyhow, back to where I was, we keep focusing on this poverty of condition thing, and so we do relief, providing for people when it really calls for walking alongside people, helping them identify and mobilize their own resources, and only then asking, okay, how can we add to that to maximize its impact? We love to talk about leveraging, right, in the world. It's just leveraging that. You've got these assets, there's social networks, there's financial things, there's knowledge you have, and how can we just add to that to maximize its impact? And that's the whole essence behind asset-based community development. But I believe the church, we rush in so quickly to do relief, and that's why we're paternalistic. We come in and say, I know what your problem is. I walk into community, and within 5 minutes, I can diagnose the key issues. And I may be right about a lot of them, but that doesn't mean that's the right thing for them to be working on right now. What's their set of priorities that they need to be working on, maybe to eventually build to those? So we have this knowledge paternalism. We do that spiritually too, a lot, and that's the great thing. I teach at Covenant. The thing that this generation is going to experience, the generation of these students, is they're going to see the majority church that's grown in numbers, we know that, and it's grown in power. I mean, it's an incredible body. They're going to start growing in, I think, bravery to finally tell us what they've been wanting to tell us for a long time.
Good point.
And boy, I think this book is just a bathing of the message. I get a lot of friends around the world that are nationals in their context, and they're like, "I'm glad this is being said." And so I hopefully can hear them more in the future and realize they got a lot going for them, and our roles and relationship with them have got to be ready to adjust.
Yeah.
Steve, you keep bringing up this pesky thing about relationships. I noticed that in the book, and from a local church context, I kind of wish you would have left some of that out because we like programs a lot, and I would like the 1, 2, 3 approach to programming this fix. And but in all seriousness, I love to focus on relationships, and I guess I'm wondering in the context of local church, and in local churches, how do we go about using this book as a way of dictating or helping maybe inform how we help without hurting?
Sure. I think, I'm an elder in my local church. I'm in a small little blue-collar kind of church in a small town in northwest Georgia. 150, 200 people in our church. I'm a college professor, and I'm probably one of the upper ends of the economic scale in our church. That gets my context. And so when I look at my own church, I say, well, the first thing we did was we started saying we got to change our deacons' policies to stop being so relief-oriented and more development-oriented, and that meant we needed more time from our people to spend time with others. And then we had to find structured ways to do that. And so some of that's very informal. I get to know some people. If somebody comes to our church and needs a need, I realize I see their issues. I think it'd be great for me to call Kathy or Mary or whoever, and they'd make a good connection. So our deacons have gotten really good at that, doing that. But the other thing is, this is the place where programs and relationships connect. There are some things where you can do programmatic. For example, jobs preparedness training in the U.S. How to get a job, keep a job, and advance in a job. That's kind of what job preparedness is about. Well, that's a program, and there's a lot of different models for it. We talk a lot about Jobs for Life because we like those guys. We believe they have a really good biblically based approach to this stuff. We've done that program in our church a couple times. I've led it. I've really seen its impact. So yeah, you get this program and all these pieces to it, but the key thing that makes it so powerful is that every participant in the program, a poor person, has a champion from our church who's basically walking with them. They come to the lessons each week, and those are very interactive. They're not just me standing up there teaching. It's incredible. It's just, the environment is so fun. And then they call them during the week and say, how you doing with your homework? Got any questions? You know, all that kind of stuff. So now within the context of a program, you've got this really embedded relationship starting. And we don't make people say, you know, once you start with this person, you got to be friends with them forever, because that's just not going to get anybody off the couch. It won't get me off the couch. But if you say, hey, I got to do this for 16 weeks, and in those 16 weeks, I can make an impact in that person's life. I can help them move forward with some things. That's doable. It's tangible. If I decide to keep going with that relationship afterwards and turn into a friendship, fine. If I don't, I've still been very impactful in a fairly, you know, concise period of time.
The wheels in my head are turning big time on this, and I love it.
Well, the problem, I think, some of the reaction to all the relationships, we love this. It's just this all huggy-feely, never ends. Everybody becomes our friend. Guys, I work full-time. I got 7 kids. I don't want to give my time. You know, I'll give my money, by the way, which is a great ministry. I think we've had a lie in the church that writing a check is somehow not.
Listen, I was going to go this way, Steve. That's the question I was going to ask you. It's easier sometimes to write the check, isn't it?
It's easier, and that doesn't mean it's bad, by the way, because the most relational thing I do is fund organizations that have indigenous workers working in their own communities who will understand the context, understand their people, love the Lord, and want to serve those people.
Right.
The best thing I do is write a check to those to turn my brothers loose. That's one of my huge passions, and it's part of what my sadness. I'll just play this: the short-term missions movement. Is we're spending so much money going, and I get that. I'm not against it all. It can be it can be an impactful experience, but it's really about us standing with our brethren and turning them loose down the road.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, before we let you go, is there a place where our listeners can find you on the internet?
Yeah, Chalmers.org. I work with them, and Brian is the founder and the CEO, and that'd be a good place to start a look of learning tools and also just some implementation strategies you might want to be aware of.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for taking time out. This has been. It's been awesome, man. We could talk on for for the next hour.
I feel like we only got about 5% of what we need, so we may ask you to come back.
When you get your corporate sponsors, you guys, and have your 2-hour show, give me a call.
Well, listen, you're good at raising funds. Why don't you raise those funds for us?
That's right.
That's what you want Brian for. I just talk. Brian.
Well, I agree with Steve. When it comes to our corporate sponsorship, writing a check would not be a bad thing.
Hey, give our thanks to Karis. She's the person that I worked with to set all this up today. We appreciate the work that you're doing. There she is. Hey. Yeah. She's been wonderful to work with, and just appreciate the book. We will continue to pump that book here on the show. Thanks so much for the kingdom work that you're doing.
Hey, blessings to you. I love what you guys are doing in this show. This has been really fun to interact with you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Yeah.
Drinking out of a fire hose is what they call that.
Some people don't understand the dynamic that we have sometimes. Sometimes we are really excited about a book, and then we'll get an author, and the interview's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
these kind where it just is stellar, they're great, aren't they?
Yeah. This is where you feel the passion in the book, and then when you see Steve, it's like, okay, yeah, it matches.
He was kind of giddy about this stuff.
Yeah, it's like, you really believe everything, all of this.
Right.
Like sometimes when we interview, an author about a book, it's just about the book, like the soul, but like so much bigger than that. I mean, I'm just blown away.
Well,
and the chat rooms lighting up with just
And
good
we learned
stuff.
a little bit about his personal story just during the pre-show. I mean, Steve knows what it is to be homeless because of lifestyle choices that he made, and so he comes at this from different levels. Great book. Let me just throw the book up again, Heath, and we just remind you that we're giving this away next week, and you can have your choice. Either get it the Kindle version, or we'll send you the hard copy, either one. So, Matthew, they can enter as many times as they want.
And there's all kinds of ways to enter. We'll be tweeting the Chalmers Center, following them. There'll be all kinds of different ways to get multiple entries to win that book, but go get it, okay?
And maybe they won't have to compete with Seth. Maybe
No, I have a feeling he's going to be in it. So I don't think this is on his bookshelf yet.
All right.
Everybody in the chat room is looking for a corporate sponsor to give everybody in the chat room a copy of this book.
All right. Time for
Download of the week.
Yay! Yes, yes, yes.
Sometimes we've all been looking forward to. Yes.
This is why people
Finally.
came to the show today.
Finally,
why I'm
it's
here.
here.
Finally.
That's right. Yeah, that's why Matt came in studio today.
I don't care about
Download
this
of the
book.
week. All right, T, this is all yours, man.
Okay, well, we're going to get just really technical on you here. And today we're talking about jailbreaking a phone. So iOS 6.1 can now be jailbroken. It is legal to do that.
Yes, it is
Not legal to carrier unlock without the permission of your carrier, but jailbreaking totally legal thanks to the team that called themselves Evasion, and pretty cool. And this is why. So there's a lot of, just like with anything, there's a lot of negative things that can happen. This opens up for piracy and things like that inside of stuff. But there's some cool stuff too. And this is the best jailbreaking experience so far of all of them. It's more intense. It's not as simple as it used to be to make it happen. However, the way that it's running is really great. And I want to show you just a couple things that I think are fantastic. One is called OXO, and it is a change in the task switcher. So I don't know if you're familiar with the task switcher natively in iOS, but it doesn't look anything like this. And this is just really cool. So you can see what you have going on in these little windows, and then you can, like if I want to dismiss a task, I can kill them that way, or by pressing and holding, I could kill everything out of the tray and totally get rid of all of that. Then it also has these cool features here. Quick access.
That's what
Quick
impresses
access
me. I
to
love
settings.
That. Yeah.
So you've got a brightness slider. Let's see if I can make it work here. There's a turn the brightness up and down. You got to turn the light on in the back of the phone there. Bluetooth on and off,
Flashlight.
airplane mode. And I mean, there's 3 whole panes of this. And then you've also got your standard, what you also would have here, your media controls and all of that, all right in there. Absolutely fantastic. Another great thing you can do, if you're not a fan of Apple Maps, you can set Google Maps as default. You can set Google Chrome as the default browser. So I think we're going to just test this out here. Okay, let's see here if we can do this. Get me directions to my house.
Which home address for Matthew?
That one right there.
Getting directions to Matthew.
Now I'm thinking,
Yes, put these online.
blast it all. No, okay, so this one, it didn't open up. So I may have been tinkering around with this and don't have it set up right. But anyways, there's a way to configure it out to hush it. You can also set, so you could turn Siri off and go with Google Now as the default search thing. So when you press and hold, it brings up the Google app, and you can do all that through them too. So all kinds of great things. Google Chrome's a great browser if you like that as an alternative. That can be default. Just it opens the door for some great stuff. A little bit harder to make it happen on this, but once you do, this has been the best process. There have been times in the past where jailbreaking your phone always makes it feel like there's something behind the scenes that it's just like something
seems a
I've got
sluggish.
like it's got a bum leg now, right? Like you've done it. This has been just a great experience. And one thing that's different that I've noticed is that they're putting out updates to the jailbreak. So they're patching stuff to make it smoother as it goes along. And I've never seen that before. When you jailbreak, it's like it's done and there's no follow-up work on that. There's been 3 updates to the jailbreak since it's happened to make life
You know what's
smoother.
going to happen here? He put his address up, so all of his adoring fans, when he gets
Rush
home
to my
today,
house. That's why I did
They
it.
will be there today.
Directions
wish-
to Matthew Teegee's house, please.
I wish it had worked right for the maps, like because I've done it. I had it set up at one point, and I guess I didn't check to be sure because I've been tinkering on playing with all
That
kinds
one
of different things.
feature alone, if it will default to Google Maps, I mean, I would do it just for that feature.
good.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, now this jailbreaking is free. The changing your browser, the maps, Siri to Google Now, all that kind of stuff is free. This OXO is $1.99. And it's all, you tie it in through, you can use your Google account or Facebook account, so it records that purchase. If you ever jailbroke again, it would show that you had access to that, and it all runs off of that. But very, very cool. Yeah.
The quote from the chat room is Steven quoting TG. These Apple products are so awesome with Google products running on them.
I don't believe I ever said that. But
I would say that. Listen, Google, they've done a great job of development for the iOS platform.
Their mail application, that's
love
my
it.
default now. And
Yep.
in fact,
Same here.
yeah, if there's a jailbreak way to make that default, which I was looking for and just couldn't scramble it up fast enough, I haven't had a chance to, I would definitely do that to where when you click a mail link, it opens it up in Gmail, not in the built-in mail app. They've surpassed.
I believe that when they come up with a true jailbreaking app, that it will be a huge success.
What?
An app that actually helps you break out of jail. I think that
Physically get you out of the
that's
clinker. huh?
exactly right.
All right.
I think
All
Morgan
right.
Freeman has to be there.
Let's keep moving here. Time for They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
Unfortunately, if we update the Bible app to add support for the iPhone 5's taller screen, Apple requires us to drop support for many iPhones, iPads, and iPod Touches with older operating systems. That would mean that the 700 to 900 people who are installing the Bible app on these older devices every day wouldn't be able to get it at all. It also means that many thousands of others wouldn't be able to upgrade the Bible app they already have installed. YouVersion Bible app developers explaining why the app is not optimized for the new iPhone 5. Source, YouVersion blog.
Both strength of mind and body are necessary, strength which in the last few months has deteriorated in me to the extent that I have to recognize my incapacity to adequately fulfill the ministry entrusted to me. For this very reason, well aware of the seriousness of this act, and with full freedom I declare that I renounce the ministry of Bishop of Rome, successor of St. Peter. 85-year-old German-born Pope Benedict, in his shocking announcement that he was resigning as the leader of the world's 1.2 billion Catholics. Source, the Chicago Tribune.
People miss the fellowship and worship they left behind in their childhood churches, but have since yearned for a return to them. The more I came to realize this point, the more obvious it became. All of these people, made in God's image, are simply trying to fill the void of their design and purpose without actually knowing how. Kyle Brashear is in his article, My Sunday at an Atheist Church. Source, The Christian Post.
Now, it's not my intention to offend anyone. I have discovered, however, in recent years that it's very difficult to speak to a large group of people these days and not offend someone. And people walk around with their feelings on their shoulders waiting for you to say something. Did you hear that? And they can't hear anything else you say. The PC police are out in force at all times. I remember once I was talking to a group about the difference between a human brain and a dog's brain. And a man got offended. He said, you can't talk about dogs like that. But, people just focus in on that, completely miss the point of what you're saying. And we've reached a point where people are afraid to actually talk about what they want to say because somebody might be offended. People are afraid to say Merry Christmas at Christmas time. It doesn't matter whether the person you're talking to is Jewish or, whether they're any religion. That's a salutation, a greeting of goodwill. We've got to get over this sensitivity. And it keeps people from saying what they really believe. I'm reminded of a very successful young businessman. And he loved to buy his mother these exotic gifts for Mother's Day. And he ran out of ideas. And then he ran across these birds. These birds were cool. They cost $5,000 a piece. They could dance, they could sing, they could talk. He was so excited he bought 2 of them. Sent them to his mother. Couldn't wait to call her up on Mother's Day. Mother, what'd you think of those birds? And she said, they was good. He said, no. Mother, you didn't eat those birds. Those birds cost $5,000 a piece. They could dance, they could sing, they could talk. And she said, well, they should have said something. And that's where we end up too if we don't speak up for what we believe. And what we need to do in this PC world is forget about unanimity of speech and unanimity of thought. And we need to concentrate on being respectful of those people with whom we disagree. And that's when I think we begin to make real progress. And one last thing about political correctness, which I think is a horrible thing, by the way. I'm very, very compassionate, and I'm not ever out to offend anyone. But PC is dangerous. Because you see, this country, one of the founding principles was freedom of thought and freedom of expression. And it muffles people. It puts a muzzle on them. And at the same time, keeps people from discussing important issues while the fabric of their society is being changed. And we cannot fall for that trick. And what we need to do is start talking about things that are important, things that were important in the development of our nation.
This is great. It's about a 27-minute speech. You can get it on YouTube. Would highly recommend. Take the 27 minutes, watch this thing.
Who are we watching?
Dr. Ben Carson, who's a neurosurgeon. If you haven't seen the movie, Gifted Hands, starring Cuba Gooding Jr., great movie. He's been inducted into the Indiana Wesleyan World Changers Hall of Fame deal. Great, and this whole speech is just phenomenal, and some of the things he said just in the last couple of days really good. So
yeah, and I think that whether you're conservative or liberal, I mean, he had something in there for everyone.
Right.
I mean, and one of the things that he talked about is he hits on the polarization that's happened in this country, and to say, hey, wait a minute. He even talked about the tax base, and if you don't listen with informed ears, you might think, oh, he takes a very conservative approach to this, but he wants loopholes cut out.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically, he's talking about a flat tax across the board.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I had an opportunity. There was a gentleman that I was talking with, and at the time, he had the second for an independent investment firm. He had the second best performing in the state where he lived. And he said this to me. It was this was like 15 years ago, and really there was quite a debate about flat tax. And he looked at me and he said, if I'm going to be honest with you, I would tell you that a flat tax is far more fair. He said, I'm at the level of income now. He said, Tony, I can fairly hide income everywhere.
Right.
He said, I use the legal loopholes that are allowed me.
Right.
Yeah.
Carson here is clearly saying you got to get rid of stuff like that.
Yeah.
He has a compelling story. He talks about that a little bit. Also, I'll just say this. He's the division director at Johns Hopkins for the pediatric neurosurgery. So
kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
He had a good...
I don't think I'll ever, rise.
The quote I just heard him say was regarding health care, and I think what he said was, when everybody's born, you give them an account that they can invest in, and his whole point was with health care, let people know how much everything costs and let people make informed decisions, but also let people make tax-deductible investments into that health care account.
Right.
Basically talking about health savings accounts. And it was just like, well, that actually makes sense, which, in the health care debate today.
One of the funny things he tells is, his mom only had a third-grade education, and yet she restricted the boys from watching TV to watch like 2 shows a week, and they had to do book reports. And he said Mom would check these book reports and put in marks and stuff. Mom couldn't even read, but we didn't know it.
She knew enough.
That's great.
It makes you laugh. Let's go to the first story, and that is the Bible app here for you version. This is interesting. You can actually show what they're talking about here with the development.
Yeah. So as the iPhone got taller, apps changed. Apparently, it's a pretty easy change to make, and they're identifying that, saying, it's a pretty easy change. We could do this, but doing it would cut people out. So let me get back to my phone. Should have been prepared on that. There we go. And if I fire up the Bible app, there's these black bars. It may be kind of hard to tell there on that screen because of that, but you should be able to get a sense of that's bigger than that. And they'll show up there, and it's like, well, why can't we get that to where it looks a little bit better. You know, this is old formatting. They're saying we would, because of the way that works, we would cut out so many people who are accessing this right now. And when you think 700, it sounds like new people a day on an older device. Yeah. And you think about if you go to, like, if you ever sell back one of your older devices through Gazelle or a place like that, well, that's where they're going. They're reselling those, and people in countries that don't have access to the latest and greatest are getting a hold of this stuff, and now this is available to them in their own hands, and this would cut them out from that. So hopefully the policy on that, or the reasoning on that, would change. This is a great example of why it shouldn't be that way, the way that Apple has it set up. But
we link you to the blog here. Here's what's interesting. Look at the conversation that's going on. I mean, one guy, the very first comment is like, hey, too bad. Cut those people off. Cut the old users off. You know, don't.
Yeah. And I had the same question. I was like, man, I can't believe it's taken so long for this to happen. I'm curious about what's happening. And that totally changed my opinion. When I read that, I was like, no, I'll suffer with the black bars on the top and bottom if it means 700 people a day have access to this.
Yeah.
We'll suffer with it.
Has anybody, while we're talking about the Bible app, I'll read some on my phone, but also on my iPad. Does anybody, like, I'll do my daily reading on the iPad. And when I get on my phone, it's like, well, you haven't been reading the last couple of days. And it's like, it doesn't show that I've completed. Oh. I want credit for my reading. I mean,
I'm pretty sure that works.
Are you logged into your account?
Yeah, you got to be logged in, and it should
sign into your account.
Because it tells me what day I'm on
both devices.
It tells me what. Yes, it tells me what day I'm on.
Now, if you gave it a day, does it just take a day to synchronize? Like if you did it in the one day, does the next day it shows up on?
No, I'm talking like if I got a couple of days behind, so I caught up on my iPad. And so I'm just. I had a few minutes on my iPhone, like 2 days after I caught up, and I'm current, and I get on there, and it shows that like I haven't read in a week.
Can I say something real quick?
Say it.
First world problem.
Okay, Mister.
Minimize.
Coming from the guy who.
Mr. Jailbreak guy. Yeah.
Heath, I'm going to start a chart with gold stars because that's how I grew up reading the Bible. So I'll start that for you just in case technology fails you.
Yes, there we go.
Well, I was like, what happened? The first time it happened, I'm like, this sounds familiar. Wait a minute, I've read this before, and then I realized.
Now, in all seriousness, I have not had that problem, so it syncs across my devices. That's why
something you have.
Sometimes
it
has
wrong.
Done, and sometimes
there's
it hasn't.
something you got it set up wrong.
If I was one of
why are y'all trying to blame it on me?
If I was one of Job's advisors, what would I say right now? I would say this is probably something spiritual in you. There's a problem.
It's because I tried to fast forward through 2nd Chronicles.
So 2 weeks in a row, we've talked about YouVersion. 2 weeks in a row, we're gonna just put it out there. We've been trying to get somebody from YouVersion on the show. If you guys, if this ever comes up and you ever see this, we want to talk to you guys and say thank you for what you're doing and let you tell us about the work that goes into making this happen and the things that you see around there. We would love to talk with the guys behind and girls too.
One of the developers was on All Things D, and I tried to contact, but didn't get nothing back. So.
And I agree with Elizabeth in the chat room. She wants my Bible reading gold star chart on the wall behind me, so I get proper credit.
I like that.
Oh, yeah, okay, so a matter of prayer.
Yes.
Gold star.
I want credit from the Lord. I am doing good works.
So we can point to that chart. Lord, look at the chart.
I want all the people. I mean, when I go to help people, I want them to see,
All right, let's... So, big shocker this week when the Pope announced he's resigning. First time this has happened since the 1400s. I mean, usually once you get this position, you die with this position.
Well, yes. One of the reasons
not that it kills you.
Right. One of the things that brought this on was his doctors told him he would no longer be able to make transatlantic flights, and so literally was not going to be able to do physically all the things the job entails. I read one less than sympathetic, I can't remember if it was on Facebook or Twitter, that just said, well, maybe next time they won't elect someone who's 78 years old. And I'm not sure how old Pope John Paul II was when he was elected, but when Pope Benedict was elected. I mean, that was one of my remarks. Like, man, this guy's 78 years old.
So was my first thought reading this story. Good for him.
Oh,
in a way
absolutely.
that I say, I wish that we had, and I hope that I am, when I realize that that there comes a time when I just can't.
Yeah.
I just can't fulfill it. That I'm willing to say I'm going to step back, and I wish that we had more people inside our own denomination.
Right. Heath, we're not talking about you.
Right. Right.
Who would recognize? Wait a minute. Maybe it's time for me to be a supporter from behind, and that's kind of what he's saying he's going to do. He's going to a monastery. He's like, I'm going to still. So I'm not going to get in the way of anything. I'm going to be continuing to support, and we need that. We should be doing that.
Well, I think this hasn't happened in 1,000 years, and like
1400s.
So maybe by him doing this, it will set a new standard of you know what?
Good point.
Be honest with yourself, because I'm sure there have been other popes. I mean, I am not up on my Catholic history confession there, but I'm sure there have been popes before that should have resigned. But in the world, but obviously there were popes that didn't have to worry about air travel and transatlantic transportation. But absolutely, I agree with Matthew that how humble to resign that position, how he did.
Also, our good friend David Drury had yesterday he threw out on Twitter an article that he had written really in 2005, and then he updated why should we care?
Yeah.
So why, as Protestants, should we care? And so I went back and read it and had some good thoughts there. So I would recommend that if you're following.
How do you feel history will look back on Benedict? I think positively. He was very much a conservative inside the church. Yeah. I think positively coming out
Cardinal
of
Dugan. I heard him yesterday, and he said that there was a challenge for Benedict because Pope John Paul did so much. There was a lot of reform. He worked tirelessly, and he said Benedict had a lot to live up to. And he said so the comparisons have been hard in that respect. So this is someone from the inside,
Yeah.
From my observations on the outside, though, there's nothing negative. I mean, he stepped into problems too. That's been talked about a lot with the whole priest abuse stuff. He had to. I mean, he was stepping in as was really just humongous issue and handled it well. I feel like.
Personally, I don't think he's done anything to hurt the office or the church, big church or little church. I give him on a scale of 1 to 10. Give him an 8.7.
I'm sad that just this past fall he started tweeting from just right before Christmas. He sent out his first tweet, and now so I'm hoping that the next
maybe it was Twitter that just discouraged me. I'm never gonna
quit.
Conquer Twitter.
And I've heard this before, like from my parents. This is so hard to understand. Hashtags, @replies. This is too much work.
He got on the Bible app. He's like, these black bars. Can't live with it. I'm done.
I can't get it to sync across my devices.
I read.
Real quick, if you want a fascinating read, go to this article at the Christian Post we link you to. My Sunday at an atheist church. He said, I get there, and first, he said, the church, it's only their second service. Atheist church, that's what they call it. It's only their second service. It seats 150. There are 200 people there.
Wow.
Someone comes out, it's a charismatic person, welcomes everyone. Then they go into the band and music. And he said, I'm just kind of sitting back watching this whole thing. He said, then a guy comes out to speak, and he talks about the Big Bang. And he said, the whole time, I'm drawing parallels between the Big Bang and the one that would start the Big Bang. And seeing some of the consistencies, how you could put a creationist spin on what he was saying, and yet he wouldn't talk about, so what was that initial thing that started it? He said it was almost like it was being avoided. And then we read for you the quote. He said, to watch these people, he said, I heard the comment over and over again that people were saying that, well, one of the things I do miss about going to church when I was a kid, I loved the idea that just the atmosphere and the fellowship that we had. And so the quote that I read for you, it's a great summation of his take on that whole thing. Probably take you 10-15 minutes to read the article. It is a great read. And some atheists are really offended by this. You know,
By
it's
having church?
Yeah, even calling it a church. Right?
I could see that.
Yeah, atheist church, and it's an old church they meet in. Yeah, one said you might as well call us, concentration camp curators.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Oh wow. Yeah. So some atheists were just really offended by the whole thing.
And what songs do they do? Well, they did some of the best hits from Queen,
right?
And Stevie Wonder. So
there
that's
you go,
kind of the
man.
music they do.
Wow.
And some of the people said they wanted something a little more traditional. So maybe
what would traditional be? Barry Manilow,
Bing Crosby,
Beethoven.
Oh, Beethoven.
Were they allowed to bring coffee into the sanctuary?
Hold on.
Handel's Messiah.
Beethoven. No. All this is wrong. None of that would work. Well,
what would it be?
I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be either of those.
All right. Let's talk about our book giveaway for next week.
Yes, it is When Helping Hurts. You can go to, when the show's over, thetechnologyshow.com/giveaway.
Or on our Facebook page, there'll be a spot.
Yep,
where
there'll be a spot.
do it
Enter as often as you like. There is no limit on that. And you can, if you win, you can choose the
physical copy. And they will probably have to
copy.
compete against Seth Cotton this week.
Yes, Seth Cotton says it's on like Donkey Kong, and that he is entering. His fingers are already bleeding from entering so much. So.
All right. Well, it's been good having Matt Irvin in studio today, man.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And Matthew Hirschap.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
you heard his contribution earlier.
Yeah.
His cell phone went off. You should have seen him over here.
There was a great look of panic that washed across his face. I loved it. Oh yeah,
it was great.
Karis got drug into the picture, like an arm grab. So Tony, you got to grab Matt and pull him in there.
Come here, Matt.
There you go. Wait.
Right there. Yeah. See, what's becoming an issue for us is we're becoming so widely known that our fans are coming to the studio, and so it's hard for us to deny.
But we do have stadium seating, so come on and join us live audiences. Right? We can pack about 300 people in this studio, so just
give
come
or
on.
take.
Yeah, silence.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start putting an announcement
like at the theater. We will.
Silence,
All right. Hey,
Ushers
Matt,
will escort you out.
Where can our listeners find you on the internet?
You can find me on Facebook, but if you have something you'd like to say to me directly, you can email me at mattirvin21@gmail.com.
All right, Heath.
HeathMulligan.com and Heath Mulligan everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, the interwebs.
I'm at MatthewTG.com, and Tony's at Anthony Casey, and at ACasey64 on Twitter, I believe.
Yeah,
isn't that right?
That's exactly right. Real quick, next week we have Brad Ostendy. He'll be our guest. He works for Ready to Focus. This is a group that uses neurofeedback and computer technology to help people overcome issues related to stress, anxiety, poor concentration, distraction, poor sleep, among other issues. Works with pastors and missionaries alike. I talked about David Drury, our good friend. He recommended that we get in contact with this organization and get Brad on, so he'll be our guest next week. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, you can leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave a message there, and you'll make Matthew TG's day.
Yes. Well, Matt, play it on the air. Call
All
us.
right. As always, thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.
See you.
One day the guy on the buffalo.